Welcome to Haven't Heard with me, Adrian. Enjoy. Alright, so we're talking about Pantera, the Great Southern Trendkill. It looks like it came out on May 7th, 1996.
Yep, and they just actually released a 30-year anniversary.
Yeah, I read about that.
Yeah, a bunch of unheard takes and things like that from the album. Different versions. I think most of it is just pretty much music without vocals.
Huh, so that's like real demo stuff.
Yeah.
Alright, that's pretty cool. Were all living band members on board for that?
Well, I guess one of them didn't really have a say in it, but I'm sure he'd be cool with it.
All right. It looks like this album is 53 minutes long, which is the longest album I've done so far. So it was a long listen.
Just wait till I make you listen to a live Fish album.
Oh, no, not happening. I don't have 3 days. So this album was certified platinum. So that's a lot of record sales.
Yeah, and especially the time when it came out, you had a lot of the grunge bands out prevailing, and this album was just, I think it was for those who, wanted something other than the grunge scene, kind of just a revisit to true heavy metal, but even more extreme than it had once been. Pantera, especially as they progressed, every album got heavier and heavier and heavier. And a lot of bands can't do that.
Yeah, I didn't realize how late this album was in their discography. And so I saw all the previous albums that came before this, and they definitely were a different band at the beginning.
Yeah, no one talks about those first four albums.
Because his name was Diamond Daryl.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little less hardcore than Dimebag.
Yeah, it was a different band.
That is... with different interests.
They had a song called Ride My Rocket.
So that's like kind of Kiss.
Very. Diamond Daryl was very influenced by Kiss.
Yeah, I can tell. So during this album, there looks like there was a kind of a tumultuous relationship between Phil, the vocalist, and the rest of the band.
Yep.
So do you have any background on that more than I do?
Well, yeah, I've watched TV shows like Behind the Music and of Pantera. I've read Rex Brown, the bass player. I read his book that he released about 3 or 4 years ago. So I've gotten some background information on what was going through on those years. Essentially, this album, Phil was just really hard into drugs, specifically heroin. And he became sort of detached from the rest of the band, kind of hard to get along with. So Phil would have his own tour bus, and the other three would have theirs. It just got to a point where they couldn't even stand being around each other anymore. And for this album specifically, they recorded the three, Rex, Vinny, and Dimebag, all recorded the music in Texas. And Phil Anselmo recorded the vocals by himself in New Orleans. So they just wrote all the music and mailed the music to him. He did the vocals and then mailed it back.
Had they written the album beforehand, or did he just get a bunch of music he had never heard before and then just wrote some vocals over it?
I think some of it they've jammed in the past. All of the songs, the songwriting portion was pretty much the other three. For an example, one of the songs on the album, it was an outro solo for the song Floods. Dimebag actually wrote that when he was a teenager. There's old footage of him playing that. And then I guess they just thought it would fit at the end of that song, so they added that in. So there were definitely parts of songs that Phil had heard in the past.
Okay. So one thing I noticed is they do only have one guitarist, and they have a ton of doubled guitar parts. So I don't know if you've seen them live, but how did their live show work?
Unfortunately, I'd never seen them live.
And you never will.
I know. So this album, previous ones, they didn't do so much double tracking of rhythm guitar. So, and I know live, they would do their songs with only Rex backing the rhythm with his bass. That was cool, man. It just sounds, watching live videos and things. Rex is a bass player. That rhythm section alone, I mean, they were just one of the tightest in history, I think. They were just so tight together. But even some of their earlier albums, they didn't even, when they recorded songs, they didn't even use a backing guitar track while Dimebag was soloing. So you could truly hear just Rex's bass thumping along with the rhythm. And it was cool because it kind of created this like detachment almost. But it was cool. They would kind of be like surfing in and out of each other instead of having that, backing guitar, playing along with the bass.
Right. And so it seems like it would kind of make it less thick and kind of feel less heavy. I guess it works.
Yeah, as far as, what you hear, like heavy, that's one thing. Like Pantera, I just think their songwriting in general, that is heavier in my opinion than bands like Slipknot. Granted, Slipknot may be louder, but heavy to me is like Black Sabbath's heavy. I don't think heavy and loud are pretty much, aren't the same thing.
Right, right, yeah. And everyone has their own versions of what heavy is.
But I'm right.
Oh, okay. Yep. Well, I guess you're right because you told me to listen to this album and I never heard it before. So, yeah, it's just they're definitely super chunky, and so I agree with you that this album is very heavy in kind of the way I would think stuff is heavy, and not like Slipknot heavy, as you put it. It did sound like the drums and bass take kind of a back seat in terms of like being pushed forward in the album.
See, I think Vinny's drums are just pounding. Like his his bass sound is just so prevalent, I think. I don't know. I feel like he really drives it, the music.
Yeah, I mean, he keeps it up, and him and the bass work really, really well together. It's just, I mean, a nice thing is it sounds like there's no over drumming, and there's not someone doing a bunch of unnecessary stuff in the rhythm section that just kind of
Yep, I agree.
Casts a shadow over. I mean, really, I'd say the star of the band was probably Dimebag's guitar playing.
Yeah, and that's why he'll probably go down in history as one of the greatest. But going back to the drums, yeah, he doesn't add unnecessary fills and things like that. Yet he does keep it interesting. He will change up some of his. He'll keep the same timing. Fills will be a little different. His writing's creative in itself. It's not just a 4/4 kind of thing. He just adds his own flair to it too, which I like.
Right.
Sort of when you're talking about like rhythm drummers knowing when not to play, I think the best example of that in all of music history is Nick Mason from Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to actually quite a lot of Floyd, and I don't think I've ever really paid attention to the drums that much. So
that could be a good thing.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah, I mean, if I'm not paying attention to him that much, I guess he's doing the right thing. One more album-wide thing that I thought of was the guitar tone is definitely an interesting choice.
It's unique.
Yes, it's not. Again, it's like not what I would think of as heavy in terms of like pounding, but it's very aggressive.
Yeah, he's got a one-of-a-kind sounding guitar tone. That's why it'd be really hard for anyone to ever mimic him.
Yeah, it's very... I mean, I felt like there's a lot of mid in that guitar tone, which is kind of not standard for like metal sound nowadays, especially.
Well, that's, I think, what makes them stand out, too. A lot of mid, that makes sense, but I've always thought of it as just, it's in the title, right? Great Southern Trendkill. But that band... their music, it's heavy, but it sounds Southern. Like, I don't think a band from Massachusetts would be able to write that kind of music. It's just something about being from the South. It really comes through. Like, I think it's hard to explain. I don't want to say it. It's like, it's a Southern thing, but
you wouldn't understand.
It is. It's just, it's so Southern sounding. If that makes sense.
And how would you know what Southern sounding stuff sounds like?
Oh, I like a lot of Southern bands.
Where are you from?
Richmond, Virginia.
There you go.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I'm just going to get into the songs of the album.
Cool.
So the album opened up with Great Southern Trendkill, which was a surprise to me because I didn't really know what I was getting into. It definitely caught me a little off guard with like that speed intro and just a million pinch harmonics being thrown out all over the place.
It's extreme, man. And not to mention Phil's screaming is some of his just ugliest vocals, I think, that he's done in all of his albums. So raw, his scream. It's just.
Yeah, and I also got the sense of kind of what kind of vocals he does, and he does like what I think of as kind of like hard vocals, but not necessarily like full out screaming. Like it's more like tough metal vocals and not full wail.
No, I agree with you.
So that's one thing that I was like, oh yeah, I know now maybe a little bit why I haven't gotten into them as much.
So you've heard of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've heard a couple of their songs too.
Right. Okay.
I mean, you'd probably be able to list probably the 3 songs I've heard of theirs before.
Walk, 5 Minutes Alone. I don't know.
Oh, I was just gonna let you list a bunch of songs off. Yeah, so it was kind of my introduction to actually listening to Pantera, and I was a little surprised. And so I definitely like the guitar work. The vocals for me, not as huge of a fan. Just I'm not that fan of that style of vocals. I like the full tilt screaming.
Okay.
But yeah. And then we went into War Nerve, which had that like super thick guitar intro.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was brought back in. And then, I mean, this kind of showed the strong rhythm section side when they did those tempo and feel changes into like it sounds like what they do most, which is like groove, like
Yes.
groove metal.
It's funny. Yeah, they are considered, I guess, groove metal, which I think's, I don't know, it's an interesting genre, but that's one thing I like about them. They are so heavy, yet they always have that groove where, you actually can get into it, and whether you know it or not, you'll be nodding your head to it. It just gets you trapped.
Right. And I guess that's kind of just what groove is kind of once you're listening to it, you can bob along, even if you're not really paying attention.
Yeah.
It sucks you in. Feel free to jump in on any specifics about the songs too, if you...
Going back to the first song, Great Southern Trendkill, I actually used a lyric out of that song as my senior quote from high school.
I can't wait for this.
Yeah, it's buy it at a store, from MTV to On the Floor. You look just like a star. It's proof you don't know who you are. Bam!
And you won all the fans with that yearbook quote.
Yeah, I didn't have many girlfriends in high school.
Okay. Gonna watch you struggle with that beer.
What are you talking about?
All right, so now we're on to 3, Drag the Waters. This one, kind of like its name, I was expecting. It's got that slow chunk.
Almost kind of drags. I hate to say it.
Yeah,
But
kind of.
the song as a whole.
It feels kind of slow.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of muddy, almost like dragging the water.
But I do like the cowbell use.
Oh yes, I did write this down. The constant block hits on the drum kit. It kind of cut through the whole song. It was kind of nice.
I enjoy cowbell.
Yeah, and it did have those short bursts of like upbeat riffing. All in all, this one definitely dragged for me, and it was mostly just made up of like the one riff.
Yep.
And
that's why me and my friends had always joked around like, yeah, that song drags.
Yeah, so that one was a little boring once you got past like the intro riff. I didn't really remember anything about it.
When you were listening, were you paying much mind to the lyrics in the songs?
Well, I don't normally listen for lyrics or listen to lyrics or pay attention to lyrics, just because I don't really place a lot of value on lyrics when I'm listening to music. But this time, because the albums I've done before this, I couldn't really mention anything about lyrics. I pulled up the lyric, like a sing-along sheet on Amazon, that when you're listening to stuff on Amazon, you can pull down the lyrics and it follows along. So it's like Amazon karaoke.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I actually paid attention to some of them.
And that's one thing I like about Pantera too. I think Phil, he's a great lyricist.
From what I read, maybe
he's different. He's got a wide range of vocabulary. This album in particular, the whole concept is pretty much trends. And
yeah,
how much he's been, misrepresented in interviews and things like that. But no, I think his lyrics are amazing. Once we get to some of the other songs, I'll say some of my favorite lyrics from those.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's really good at fuck. That's pretty good. He's
some people can't say fuck that well. He says fuck very well.
And I'll be honest with you, I do agree. He did quite a good job at weaving it into the songs without you really noticing.
Yeah.
So tens. This one kind of brought it back in a little bit with that flangey riff intro. So
it was the first one that it was kind of like that song gave you a chance to breathe. But again, that song specifically, I like the lyrics a lot in it. But yeah, like you said, the guitar sound in that song is way different also.
Mm-hmm. It surprised me a little bit.
There's 3 songs on this album. Well, I wouldn't call Tens a ballad, but there's 3 songs that aren't just balls to the walls heavy like the rest of the songs. So that's the first one.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to hear it, but then I was reading like the history of the album. I read that they had kind of done a little more variety of work on the album because they wanted to like expand their sound a little bit. So that's kind of cool.
Yep.
To hear them diving into some different stuff. It does have, again, this song especially had that more hard rock vocal style, really toning down like the grit, like vocal grit, more that regular hard vocal.
Yeah, so Phil, he's in so many bands, and almost every single band, even every album, he sounds different from album to album. Just the way he sings, he's got a hell of a range for doing what he does. So I think, at times he does get to show it's not all just about that, tough guy shouting screams. He can actually sing pretty well sometimes.
Yeah, and I was surprised by that too.
Yeah.
That, especially coming out of the Great Southern Trendkill at the top of the album, I was like, oh, this is the same band and the same vocalist on the same album. That's kind of surprising.
Yep.
And also that like kind of acoustic work on this song was a surprise as well. Every part of this song was a surprise to me.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's my favorite song on the track, but it's definitely one that it stands out. It's just so different from the others.
Yeah. 13 Steps to Nowhere. Get that rumble drum intro.
Love that.
Yeah. Every time I hear rumble drums, it just makes me think like Jungle Beat.
See, I like, going back to Vinnie Paul's drum sound, I think his bass drum is just pounding, and his snare drum even too sounds like just someone's back breaking. I do love the sound of his kit.
Well, if you're interested, you can always just get the sound of someone's back breaking and MIDI it over a snare sample.
That's not a bad idea. There's an actual band out there called K9. And
is it spelled K9?
No, it's like it's a dog, Canine.
Okay.
And their lead singer is 3 pit bulls.
Oh, right.
And they just growl and bark over their songs.
Yeah, so that's a studio band. That's not a live band.
Right.
I'd like to see them go on tour. So 13 Steps to Nowhere. The vocals on that this is when I started paying attention to the lyrics a little bit. And it was, that's not an uplifting song.
I wouldn't say many of them are uplifting at all. They're about...
You're quite right. As we're about to find out on 6 and 7.
Yeah.
But this is when he shows like the triplet on the kick drum. So kind of another style coming out here on this song. It's got that speedier guitar riff, and it's got that like wah breakdown.
Yeah, I love that. Well, you're a breakdown guy, aren't you?
I'm a proper breakdown guy.
Okay.
Like
I don't like it all, but when Pantera breaks down, it's sweet.
I mean, that's like a proper breakdown. like a metalcore breakdown is less of a breakdown and more just a consistent style of writing
Yeah, right.
for them.
I mean,
So,
the whole song can be a breakdown.
right. And then in which case it's not really a breakdown.
Right.
But like some metal and hardcore bands, like actual hardcore bands, have like really good, just like those chunky breakdowns, that actually breaks the song down.
Same band, different album. Off their first one, that's really a Pantera album. After their glam days, Cowboys from Hell, the song Domination. If you like breakdowns, listen to that song Domination. Tell me what you think. It's got one of the best breakdowns ever.
All right, I'll have to check that out after this. All right, so we take 13 steps into Suicide Note Part 1. So we're just going downhill real quick. I was caught off guard again. It's got this like long ambient intro and kind of takes the energy way down into like that 12-string acoustic.
Which is very cool, because I don't think Dimebag has ever used a 12-string prior to that, or maybe even after that.
So this is an exclusive.
Yeah.
And it's got like the singing style vocals, and also he's got like a lot of layering going on.
Yes.
A lot of back and forth with the recording his lines.
That's one thing he actually does do a lot throughout most of his albums.
I mean, it is a lot easier to record your vocals like that. But it's really hard to do live.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why Pantera live is just a different animal.
It's probably a lot more chaotic.
Oh, yeah.
Not saying this isn't chaotic, but this definitely is held together more than I would imagine their live show is.
Yep. But again, the bass, the drums, man, and even the guitar, they never fall apart.
So we saying vocals are where it falls apart?
You can watch shows, man, from the 90s, and you don't know what you're going to get with Phil. Sometimes he'll literally be rolling around on the stage, just barking and screaming, like, I guess as a result of doing too many drugs and getting too drunk. So,
and writing vocal lines that he just simply can't replicate live.
Yeah, he just screams over those.
Yeah. Man, I wish I could see that live.
I really do wish I could.
Well, maybe they'll bring him back as a hologram at some point. And then there's this like end of the song synth part playing that I was also like, wow. There's a lot of stuff about this that doesn't feel like what I thought a Pantera album was going to have in it.
Yep. They can. This album, yeah, I guess it is sort of exploratory. Is that the right word? They were definitely trying a few things out. And like I said before, each album, as they progressed, they do get heavier and heavier and heavier. But when you take out, the 3 songs in this album that aren't quite balls to the walls heavy, it's still heavier than the previous album as a whole. Their last album that came after this, there's none of that. It's every single song is just in your face. I love it. It's great. So again, they just got heavier and heavier and heavier. Honestly, I don't know where they would have went after their next album. So I don't think you can get heavier than that.
Maybe they would have just gone into constant breakdowns.
I hope not.
Maybe they would have turned into a metalcore band.
I hope not.
A southern metalcore band. All right, well, speaking of them not being around anymore, Suicide Note Part 2 goes into a completely different beast with immediate speed and noise, and then goes, into that groove chunk. Is how I kind of thought the whole album was just groove chunk.
Yeah. No, they really did. They brought it back up after Suicide Note Part 1.
I can't imagine why they'd need that.
Right.
Yeah, and this song had probably one of my most memorable breakdowns that they did, which was just super heavy sounding, and just the straight breakdown of just that super chunky straight picked breakdown is just really good.
And I don't know if you, on Suicide Note Part 2 and like Great Southern Trendkill, War Nerve, and maybe even 13 Steps to Nowhere, they have someone else doing backing vocals. Not even backing vocals, just backing screams.
Yeah, and it's
Seth Putnam from Anal Cunt.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I guess they were buddies. If you haven't listened to them, it's worth checking them out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say they're good.
I did look them up because I've heard of them before.
It's just
and
one giant controversy. That's all they are.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of him, it seems like people that are associated with this band end up dead.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out there.
No, that's yeah. Good observation.
Yeah, and then it has like this weird kind of after that like breakdown riff, it goes into like the punk, it kind of like a backbeat, like metal feel real quick, which is so it's kind of like this song's kind of all over the place stylistically,
It's a train wreck.
kind of like the band was at this time.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, even his vocals are a bunch of different styles. That sounds like because it definitely has that like super actual just screamed metal vocals, and that was from the other guy.
Seth Putnam.
Yes, Seth Putnam. And they did like some fade outs on this album too, which I started noticing here was a trend. One that I think they should have killed.
Don't say trend. Yeah, exactly.
Because um, I think fade outs are kind of a thing that should have died for the most part, maybe in the 80s.
I'll agree with you on that.
Fade outs are like kind of, to me, it feels like, well, we couldn't really figure out how to end this song, so just listen to it end for 30 seconds.
No, that's exactly
Hope you
right.
like it.
Yep.
Drifting into silence. And then we get into Living Through Me, Hell's Wrath.
What'd you think?
Well, I like this one for the most part, just because it is like a straight driving metal riff. It just, it's pretty simple to the point.
So this
Anger.
song, it has one of my favorite riffs in it, and it's really goes to show too how Rex Brown with his bass can work with Dimebag and his guitar. Just the two of them playing the same thing, but it's so like Rex's bass even has its own unique sound. Like it's one of my favorite riffs from Pantera is in that song.
Do you agree that I thought the bass tone that they're using on this album is quite good?
Yeah.
It definitely chunks up the kind of lack of low point heavy that the guitar has because it's more mid focused. So I guess because they're so separated in their tone, that's kind of why you can notice both of them really easily.
Yes.
Which is also, I guess, kind of uncharacteristic of metal.
Yeah.
Because it's not buried in the mix.
Yep.
Which is something that, if anyone remembers, Dan and I talked about Black Sabbath, where they also didn't have the bass buried in the mix.
Yep. Bass players need to be heard, man.
So what are you?
Well, I was just the guy in a band who played bass guitar.
Yeah, but this song, it does have that like kind of drop everything at the midpoint with that super long interlude that kind of bummed me out a little bit because I kind of felt like just disjointed.
I think it kept it interesting.
I mean, he's kind of like whispering some stuff.
That's another thing he likes to do.
Some whisper vocals.
Every album he's ever done, no matter what band it is, he always has at least one song where he does this kind of stuff, like deep voice whispering, just talking over something.
Yeah, and that feels very like hard rock-esque as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, people might take whatever it's called with my opinion on like what sounds hard rock, but that's just how I think of stuff.
Well, like you were saying before, I guess everyone has their own opinion on what heavy is,
right.
What hard rock is, but yeah.
Yeah, and they kind of walked up that fine line between, I mean, I guess that's what this whole album is to me. It's like kind of like I'm hearing music that's definitely like metal and like speed influenced and just super chunky and chaotic sounding and noisy. And then I'm hearing like vocals that I didn't really think matched as much, like kind of the music that I was hearing.
Maybe that's what the southern part of it is.
Yeah, maybe I'm just not southern. I'll give you a hint. The furthest east I've ever been is New Mexico.
That's down there.
So yeah, I'm not well immersed in the southern culture. I think you're the most southern culture I've had.
Okay.
Now we go into Floods, which was long.
It's long, but I'm okay with that.
Explain.
Just that's one of the most unique songs I think Pantera has ever written. I do love the guitar solo, of course, but it's one of those guitar solos that is regarded as one of the best guitar solos ever from Dimebag.
I saw it was on the list.
It's It's regarded as one of the best guitar solos. I mean, it is. It's a really good guitar solo. Okay, if that song didn't have that guitar solo, it would have not needed to be as long as it was. And I just love also the whole just fill in the floods, just over. That's just that's heavy, man.
Yeah, that part was kind of sludgy feeling.
Yeah,
I felt like I was in a really long flood.
What'd you think of that outro solo?
Yeah, I did note that. I was going to mention that it doesn't sound. Well, it has kind of like that repeated outro guitar riff before that kind of like fades out, and so I like that outro guitar riff. I thought maybe it went on a little too long, but then it fades into like that melodic, like kind of like low riff in the background to the end of the song. I like that riff. It seemed kind of out of place.
And it was, because they didn't write that with the song. Dimebag had written that like 15 years earlier, and they just kind of put it at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like they threw it in there.
They
just
did.
Kind of like, hey, we have this riff lying around that's cool, and it needs to be in there, but there's nowhere to put it. And this was already a very disjointed sounding song.
It is.
Because it has a ton of different sounds and parts in it.
And I think those sounds of the flooding and the storm, that is what held all of it together. Otherwise, if it went to that outro solo without the help of the sound effects and the thunder and like the flooding sounds, it would have made less sense.
Yeah, I mean, when they put those sound effects and stuff in there, I was like, okay, well, they're clearly just like trying out a lot of stuff on this song, and they're putting a lot of stuff in to see what kind of like what sticks.
Yep.
So it didn't seem surprising to me that they threw that riff in the end. It was still kind of odd. I really liked that riff, and I actually wish that I could have heard a song by them that was built entirely around that riff.
I love it too. One of my friends bought this album on vinyl a couple of years ago. We were listening to it. That whole outro riff wasn't on the album. I guess because they had to make sure it all fit on one vinyl. And it was a huge bummer.
Did you take it back?
No, I didn't take it back.
Oh.
We were bummed out. It's like, really? You cut that song short?
Actually, he should have... who's responsible for that? Probably the label.
Definitely the label.
Yeah, he should have just sent it to the label with a note that said, just please splice in 30 seconds of this riff.
Just on this one physical album that I have.
Just kind of cut and paste. I guess it's full disclosure. I'm not a huge fan of solos in general. So that's kind of why I can't really comment on any of the solo. And I know Dimebag's like super big in solos, and like one of his signature thing is all the solo work he does. So I'm not a really good person to talk to about solos, I guess, because I kind of just not a huge fan of them. As a long-time guitarist, right. I'm telling you, I'm not a fan of guitar solos.
I don't know if I've ever met anyone who didn't like guitar solos.
I mean, do with that what you will.
All right, I'm going home.
No, that was the door closing. Sorry. My Foley work on the first one was really bad. All right, so...
the rest of the album's fine. It's whatever. It's cool.
Oh, no, he's getting up. Yeah, so the underground in America. No, I'm making you sit there without a beer for the rest of this.
I'll stay here. We're talking about underground in America.
My first note is so many pinches. The intro on this the intro on this song is built on pinch harmonics.
Yeah, it is.
Not like full-on pinch harmonics, but kind of those like half pinches.
It is. It's not like, have you ever heard like Zakk Wylde?
Oh, no.
Like
that
is
just 100% squealing pinches all the time.
Yeah. But yeah, nothing like that. This song, going back, if you listen to lyrics, this song has some of my favorite lyrics as well. It's a cool song. Did you catch the lyrics?
You know what? On this song, Amazon didn't put lyrics to it.
They were scared.
Yeah.
It just goes back to the whole trend thing. And another reason why I love this album, because when I went through high school, I was an angry young man. Didn't really hang out with the preppy kids, the jocks, the goths, all that stuff. I just thought it was also fake. Going back to my, yearbook senior quote, I was just all about trying to be your own person.
Did you find it any irony in the fact that you used the lyrics from a platinum album selling band in your rebellious yearbook quote?
Not at the time, but I would rather go by those lyrics in that album than what everyone else was doing at the school. So the lyrics in this song, love them, make me all giddy, is like, I think it's towards the end where it's like, when it rains, you're home in bed, You act so real when you are alone. Don't let the Mohawk crowd see you. Haha, you fuck. Love it. And then he's just screaming, fake, fake, fake. Like, that to me was just like how I saw like everyone at school, man. It was just, that song spoke to me. And I think those lyrics are, one, they're like funny because they're calling out the people, you know.
Some of the people in probably their own scene.
Yeah, some of the people probably in their own scene, you know, the people who, you know, spend an hour on their hair every morning, get that mohawk, they go out, you know, that's who they are. They have the mohawk and whatever, all that stupid stuff.
Their
and then
studded leather jacket.
Exactly.
With a Misfits patch on it.
And then, you know, they go home. We were talking high school. They probably go home, eat dinner with the family. Mommy probably kisses them goodnight. And it's like, man, it's funny because you wouldn't want your other mohawk friends to see you. That lyric is just perfect.
But all the mohawk friends probably go home and do the same thing.
They probably do.
Yeah.
But no, as far as him calling people out in the music business, like even people in the same, you know, scene with them, it was a recent tour. I think he was touring with a different band, Superjoint Ritual, I believe, or was it Down? And they were playing with that band Guar.
Uh-oh.
So they opened for Guar, and Phil's on stage, and he's out there, and he's like, we're the scariest fucking band out there, and we don't wear masks or any of that bullshit. And just totally slamming Guar, who comes on after them, who took them on tour with them.
Did they continue the tour?
Oh, yeah, they did. I think he almost got into a fight with the lead singer, the dude who died from Guar.
See? Everyone who comes into contact with this band dies.
Oh, true story. Maybe they did get into a fight. I don't know.
Well, it's not very metal if they didn't actually get into a fight.
Right.
Yeah, this song had some good straight double kick. He doesn't use a whole lot of double kick work, so it's kind of nice when he throws it in because it makes it sprinkling on top there. Yep. It makes it special.
And when he does use it, he doesn't use it continuously.
Oh, I like the continuous though.
He does crazy rhythms with it, which is really cool.
Yeah, and then of course they have that groovy bridge.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
love the groovy bridge. That's when Rex Brown gets the shine.
Yeah,
man.
It was a good groovy bridge though. And then there's a kind of like that like straight speed riff that goes into like back and forth with that riff and like this tremolo solo guitar part.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I was like, well, is this the solo or are they doing something new? And then it just went into a regular solo.
Yep.
So then when I started listening to the song again, they were back into the regular just guitar part and then it ended.
I like when it ends too and he just goes, the trend is dead, over and over. And it's just like, oh man, it's fucking heavy, dude. And then
I feel like you're just going to rip our couch apart right now.
Dude, I just want to like fight someone, you know?
Uh-oh.
But no, I love that. Just transitioning from just the, you know, the trend is dead, and then going into the last song. That was a cool segue.
Sandblasted Skin. On the album, it's marked reprised, but I couldn't find where it was reprised from.
So I think it has more to do with almost just wrapping up the whole album into a nutshell, bringing back the trend is dead thing. Now with the reprise, you know, the very end of the song, it disappears for a minute. And then it comes back.
That was weird. I like this song. It's a standard like hardcore like drum pattern and just very straightforward. I liked it. And then that fade out at the end kind of threw me though.
I know.
Especially at the end of an album, fading out.
And then fading in.
Yeah, to be honest with you, that bummed me out hard. Like if I was your buddy that bought the vinyl, I would be more disappointed that listening to the vinyl, I had to listen to it fade out and then fade back in real quick and then have to go switch it.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if that made the vinyl. I hope not. If they took this outro out of Floods, I hope they didn't include that.
Yeah, if they were making decisions that day, they should have been making this decision as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was 53 minutes of my life.
Hey man, that's a good 53 minutes spent.
It was pretty good. I am hard pressed to say whether I would listen to this album again or not.
Oh. Try listening to another.
Yeah, now that's what I was actually thinking. I was thinking of if I was going to listen to more Pantera, I probably would check out some of their other albums. Maybe I'd go back to their glam years and see if I dig any of that stuff.
Don't do
and
that.
Alienate every other Pantera fan.
Don't do that.
Walk up to a hardcore Pantera fan and be like, "Oh, hey, have you heard of the you know, I'm really into the first 3 albums."
What is it? I think the first album is called Metal Magic.
I mean, the titles and like the covers of those early albums are just hilarious. I didn't know anything about that. And while researching this album, I was like, I had no idea this band was like this before. And it kind of it tickled me a little bit, and it made me take their like aggressive stuff a little less seriously.
So they did a good job of hiding their past, of course,
Clearly, because I didn't know.
before the internet.
Big shout out to Wikipedia.
Yep, Phil Anselmo was in one. He was in the third album, the one right before Cowboys from Hell came out. That album was called Power Metal, but he did sing on one of those 4 glam albums, the last one of them. And then I think when he came into the band, maybe he had some sort of say into it. Like, guys, this is lame. Let's try something new.
Yeah, we got to stop taking so much cue from Kiss.
Yeah.
And then they turned into this power, just thrash, and
they turned into the heaviest band of all time, pretty much at the time. I mean, Dimebag put on weight, and they just started to play different music. It was great.
Are those two connected?
They must be.
Oh, okay.
Well, you can't play glam if you're not in shape.
Oh, that is very true. That'd be an upsetting glam band to go watch.
Right.
Bunch of dad metal.
Let me ask, when you listened to this album, did you crank it up to like 11?
I turned it up loud.
To 11.
Well, the audio quality starts getting a little questionable when you blast it.
Okay.
Like super loud.
Just making sure, man, because there's nothing better than just cranking this album. It's just like, where's the whiskey? Like, I just want to fuck shit up.
I'm seeing you now. You're getting up, you're standing on the couch, and you're slamming your head on the ceiling.
I'll replace the TV once I get a job. I promise.
Thousands of dollars in renting damage. And now I have a question for you.
Okay.
And since I know you're a Beatles fan, as anyone who listened by now would know, not a huge fan of the Beatles. Not even remotely close to a huge fan of, and Daren is actually leaving the apartment.
This is the last question, obviously.
Yeah, because then no one gets up and leaves. How would you compare this band to the Beatles? And the reason I ask this is because everyone apparently holds the Beatles in like the ultimate musical esteem.
They're the greatest band in the world. So
okay, so that you are one of the people that has this opinion of the Beatles. So you were a great person to ask.
Yeah.
Would you say that they are the Beatles of modern metal?
Jesus. They don't compare. No one compares. Man, what a question. I don't know how to answer that. It's just like, well, they're not the Beatles.
It's a simple question.
Is it, though?
He's turning green. His shirt's ripping off.
Like, I was having a good time. Let's see.
I'm glad I didn't give you that last beer.
Mm-hmm. How about no?
Well, you heard it here first. And at the expense of my friendship with Daren, he is out the door. I think he's deleting my number.
You can keep that wedding invitation.
Oh, too. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Daren, for destroying our relationship over Pantera.
Yeah, thanks for nothing.